At 9:14 a.m. on September 22, 1944, just outside the French hamlet of Saint-Lô, Lieutenant Klaus Meyer of the 2nd Panzer Division felt a rare sense of serenity. He sat high in the turret of his Sd.Kfz 222 armored scout car, the engine's low thrum a testament to German industrial precision. To Meyer, a veteran of the Eastern Front, this French hedgerow country was a puzzle he had already solved. He adjusted his leather gloves, scanned the silent, shattered stone houses, and signaled his driver to advance. He was a professional. He was armored. He was safe. In the next 40 seconds, Klaus Meyer would be dead. 300 yards away, tucked into the shadow of a collapsed belfry, Corporal Luke Brand was not looking through a high-powered optic or a Zeiss rangefinder. He was staring at a frayed length of industrial hemp rope tied to a scarred structural timber. He was covered in the gray, suffocating dust of pulverized limestone, his fingers raw and bleeding from hours of silent labor. What was about to happen would flip Allied urban doctrine on its head. This was a maneuver explicitly forbidden by the SHAEF field manuals, a reckless endangerment of infrastructure that higher command claimed would only result in American casualties. But Luke wasn't following a manual written by a general in a heated office. He was following the terminal laws of physics.
Before the draft board called his name, Luther Brand didn't know a thing about ballistics or the effective range of a Panzerfaust. He was a master slater from the rain-slicked hills of western Pennsylvania. From the age of 16, he had spent his life on the 60-degree pitches of Victorian estates, mastering the geometry of weight. He knew that while a single square of Buckingham slate was heavy, a square, a 100-square-foot section of roofing, weighed nearly 1,000 pounds. He understood elevation better than any mortarman. He understood how a single rusted hand-forged nail held back a literal ton of stone against the pull of the earth. When he enlisted, his instructors at Fort Benning were baffled by him. During demolition training, Luke didn't care about the explosive yield of C2. He kept asking about the load-bearing integrity of the buildings they were practicing on. They called him unorthodox. His sergeant called him a distraction. They wanted soldiers who pulled triggers and followed the anatomy of a standard assault, not men who calculated the sheer strength of ancient timber.
The tactical problem was a stretch of road the GIs called Iron Alley, a narrow corridor of stone buildings that the Germans had turned into a vertical kill zone. Standard Army doctrine dictated a frontal assault, suppress the windows with Browning 1919s, and move in Shermans to blast the strongpoints. But the Shermans were useless here. The narrow streets meant they couldn't rotate their turrets, and the Sd.Kfz 222 scout cars were too nimble, darting out from side alleys to shred infantry with 20mm autocannon fire before disappearing. Private Danny Russo, 19, from Brooklyn. He died in the gutter trying to sprint across the street with a bazooka. He had a lucky silver dollar his mother gave him. It was found later, bent into a horseshoe shape by a 20mm shell. Corporal Silas Wayne, 22, from Tulsa, a star athlete who had a 6-year-old daughter named Clara back home. She would keep his last letter, the one where he promised to buy her a red bicycle for her birthday, in a cedar box for the next 60 years. Captain Miller, his uniform still pressed and his mind locked into the West Point curriculum, ordered a third charge. "The manual says we suppress and bypass," Miller barked, ignoring the exhausted men bleeding in the dirt. "We don't play architect, Brand. We follow the book or we don't move at all." Luke saw what the West Point strategists missed because they were looking at the enemy, not the environment. The German scout cars always paused at the same intersection to check their flanks before committing to the dash. Directly above that pause point sat the Maison de Claire, a 3-story merchant's house with a sagging, slate-tiled roof. Luke observed the pitch, exactly 45 degrees. He noted the structural rot in the main crossbeam where a previous shell had grazed it. He calculated the volume of slate tiles still clinging to the rafters, thousands of pounds of sharp, heavy stone held in a state of precarious equilibrium. If the central king post was yanked, gravity would do what 1,000 rounds of .30 caliber couldn't. He He presented the plan to Captain Miller. The response was a snarl. "You want to pull a house down on them with a rope? That's a court-martial offense for wasting time and endangering the squad, Brand. Get back in the line." Luke didn't get back in line. That night, he went rogue. He crawled through the shadows of the iron alley with nothing but a coil of industrial winch cable, a crowbar, and the silent fury of a man who had seen too many friends die for a manual. The air inside the attic of the Maison de Claire was thick with the smell of ancient dust, bat guano, and fermented grain. Sweat soaked through Luke's wool uniform, making it heavy and abrasive against his neck. He moved with the practiced silence of a man who had spent a decade walking on roofs where one wrong step meant a 3-story drop. He had rigged the cable to the king post, the primary vertical support holding up 30 feet of slate-covered rafters. He braced his boots against a masonry chimney, his muscles screaming under the tension. 480 yards, the distance Meyer's scout car had to travel to reach the trap. 14 inches, the width of the dead zone where the vehicle would stop to scan. 12,000 pounds, the estimated weight of the slate tiles and oak timber overhead. The scout car rounded the corner. Through a crack in the floorboards, Luke saw Leighton Meyer. The German looked confident, almost bored. The vehicle slowed. The brakes squealed. It stopped. Luke didn't use a rifle. He wrapped the cable around his waist, braced his core, and threw his entire body weight backward into the void of the stairwell. The timber groaned, a deep wooden scream. The rusted nails sheared with the sound of pistol shots. Impact. The roof didn't just fall, it detonated downward. A literal avalanche of stone and oak slammed into the thin top armor of the Sd.Kfz 222. The sound was like a mountain collapsing into a canyon. The scout car's suspension snapped instantly. The tires exploded under the sudden pressure. The frame buckled like a tin can. The turret was driven 3 feet down into the hull, crushing everything inside. Under 10 seconds, no explosives, no muzzle flash, just the cold terminal logic of gravity. The Slate Trap cleared the iron alley. With the scout car neutralized and the road physically blocked by tons of impassable debris, the American infantry moved up and took the sector without losing another man. Captain Miller filed a report mentioning structural instability caused by previous artillery, conveniently forgetting Luke Brand's unauthorized intervention. In 1946, the Army Corps of Engineers studied the St. Lo incident, eventually incorporating structural demolition via gravity into official urban warfare doctrine. They called it a calculated tactical collapse. They never mentioned the Pennsylvania roofer who designed it. Luke didn't care for the credit or the medals. When the war ended, he didn't stay in the service to climb the ranks. He went back to the rain-slicked hills of Pennsylvania. He picked up his hammer, his chalk line, and his dignity. He had roofs to fix and a life to rebuild, never speaking of the morning he used a merchant's house to win a battle. He had cows to milk, and the sky was the only thing he wanted to look at for the rest of his life. If you found this story compelling, please like this video. Subscribe to stay connected with these untold histories.